feels like it's falling apart? This is probably a question you have asked yourself over the past several months because, it's crazy out there. Also, let's be realistic, probably the past couple years, been a hot mess in the world. If you're living on planet Earth, past couple years, no matter where you live, have been a crazy time. And if you're listening to this in the future, hi from the future, it's probably also crazy then, because that is human nature. At any given point in history, there has been insane, terrible, horrific things that are happening. But the biggest difference is now you could have a 24/7 drip of information coming to you, flooding your system about all of the horrors that are persisting where you live and literally all over the world if you wanted to. And the worst part about that is you can really not do a lot about it. That is why so many people are overwhelmed and frustrated and just exhausted and just emotionally spent right now. It's because we have all of these atrocities that we're seeing all of the time, big things, small things, in between things, and not even just atrocities, just general things that maybe go against your value system. And you are seeing them in other places and you're getting frustrated, but you probably can't do a lot about it. So that's what I want to talk about today. How can we flip that script to where we can focus on how we can show up and be better throughout all of the world's mess? So, hey, if you're new here, my name is Lauren. This is Undefined. I've been a nutrition coach for over 12 years. I've done pretty much everything in the health and fitness space between coaching, mentoring, speaking, writing, all that. And now I am in school to be a mental health counselor. And I'm so excited that you're here. If you have been listening to the podcast, I'm giggling because, took a little bit of hiatus, which was not intentional, I promise. Once again. I thought I had a couple podcasts recorded and scheduled, and that was not the case. So took an unintentional break. I actually, funny enough, have a couple notes for today that I wrote on September 23rd. Today is October 23rd. So we're just like a month late. It's all good. And if you listen to the first episode about this podcast, I really dove into kind of how I wanted this to be different, how I wanted to show up. And yeah, it's not going to be perfect. I'm getting back into the groove of podcasting. And you know what? I'm not going to beat myself up because I did forget. And then, yes, I did bypass it and keep pushing it off. However, I have been doing a lot of work on a new project, which more details soon. But done with my excuses, tired of those. And we're just going to show up and we're going to do this. So, hey, we're back. What to do when the world is falling apart? What can we do? So the first question is to ask yourself, what role do you want to play in this situation? And that, I feel like, is the North Star for everything moving forward. Because what is important to me might not be important to you, and vice versa. And yes, we can have a whole big meta conversation about how we all need to care about each other and we should have similar values and morals and what is right and what's wrong. But that is not what the intention of this podcast is. I feel like there are people who are far better suited to have those types of conversations than me. And also, my own personal opinion is that while we might say things like right and wrong, good or bad, who determines those things? Because I could be doing something that I think is very good, and outside of, we're not talking about like sociopaths here, okay? There is a small percentage of the population who will always operate in a very different space, but we're talking about level-headed individuals. What I think is good and right, I could talk to a neighbor down the street and they could have completely different opinions than me. And this is not about one type of topic. This could be like everything. This could go from how you want to raise your kids to do you buy or lease a car? Like there's a right and wrong, air quotes, big air quotes if you're not watching the audio or you're not watching the video. There's a right and wrong for how everybody views those kinds of things. And that is trivial. Like buying or leasing a car is trivial in the face of like really big important things like war, but there's still a right or wrong in how people view things. So we have to take the stance of, what is my role here? How important is this to me? And this might be a time when there's a lot of crazy things that maybe things are stirring up inside of you, or you're seeing things that maybe you haven't before. Maybe it's time to evaluate or update your values. This could be a great time to see, have those things changed? Have what I always believed, are those values serving me? And they might be. And that could be exactly what you need to lean on. Or you could say, you know what, maybe now is the time for me to update that, because I actually don't know if I agree with this anymore. And there's countless reasons why that could happen. And there's no one specific way to attack that. But really the North Star should be, what role do I want to play in any situation? And that really goes for a lot of stuff, but especially when we're talking about this just influx of news and media and stories and just uncertainty. Go back to that first and foremost. And then on a really micro, and then we can get questions like, what can you control in your life? Actually, what domains are in your control? And it's really interesting, because I feel like a lot of times there are so many things that are actually within people's control that they're like, no, I have no handle on that. And they actually could have control, versus other things where realistically they're never going to be able to control that, but they feel like they can, or that they should, or that they would like to. But the should and the like to and the hope is not actually rooted in reality. So this could be a great thing where you're writing down, use this as a journal prompt, and write it down, whatever you want to call it. What can you control in your life? What domains? And make it as trivial as possible, like wake up time, which is not trivial at all, by the way, but I just mean in the context of, we're talking about crazy world events. What can I control? When you wake up, when you go to sleep, how much time you spend on your phone, what you're eating, what you're not eating. Are you training? Are you spending time with friends? What do you those are the things that you have control over. And then also write out, what are the things you don't have control over in life? Because sometimes seeing that, and especially in writing, can be so helpful. And then you can recognize, okay, when I'm going to a space where I'm maybe starting a spiral, okay, am I thinking about some of the things that I can't control? Oh, yes, because I did write those down. You can even pull up the list. If this is something that you're actively struggling with, that could be a great thing to visually see. And this is where it might be constantly updated, where you're like, oh, actually, I can do that. This is within my control. And you can always constantly change this, just like you can change, again, the first larger question, what role do you want to play in something? What are your values? Is this in alignment? But what can you control? What can you not? Figure out those domains. And then from there, the next two things that are so important are going to be, what is actively making you better and actively making you worse. And the second one is honestly what I feel like is probably the heavier hitter, in the sense of if we stop doing the things that make us feel worse or perform worse or whatever, that would actually move the needle so much more, but they're way harder, which is why people generally don't do them. And by people, I'm included in there too. We all do these things, which is part of why writing this down and holding yourself accountable to this is so valuable. So what actively makes you better? Say you're I feel so much better when I go on a walk every day. That's me. We're using me as an example. I feel so much better. If I do not walk, it's not good. I have a lot of energy, and it just is something that really helps clear my mind. And it doesn't even have to be a long time, but at least 10 minutes. And ideally, I like to have between, 20 to 40 minutes. But sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it's 5. And that's all I got. And that's okay. So that's where we have to say, okay, what is the thing that makes me better? walking, daily walk. Now, how can I actually implement that? Because saying you want to do something, oh, I like walking. Well, when is it going to get done? And you have to oftentimes do that and that like meticulous planning around it before it becomes habit. You're not going to always have to do that. But when you're first starting something, if it's out of your norm, then you are going to have to be a little bit more intentional about it. Some other things, as an example, if I have like 3, quality meals, generally feel better. Not really doing too hot if I'm, skipping meals or waiting too long to eat. Just doesn't really work well. Now, again, is that going to happen? Of course. There's been a million times in my life where I've had to skip a meal or I've gotten too hungry. But on a daily basis, what can I ideally control most of the time? 80% of the time, it's what I eat. And that comes down to going to the grocery store, making sure my meals are prepped. And sometimes it's doing things on the fly. I'm recording this, and guess what? Full transparency, I don't have lunch made. I don't have lunch made. I have dinner made, but I have to go to school for the next 9 hours, and I'm going to have to make a protein smoothie and drink that on the way to school. Is that ideal? Is that what I want to have for lunch? No. But here's what really happened. I took out chicken yesterday, and I left it in the sink overnight. Love that. And I did not want us to get sick, so I had to get rid of that, unfortunately, and I hate wasting food so much, but chicken just freaks me out, so we weren't going to get food poisoning over that. So that's the reality, right? So this is a perfect example of not going to be perfect lunch, but it's still something, and I'm still going to get pretty close in terms of, if we're going to look at like a macronutrient and a micronutrient perspective, probably pretty similar, just going to be a different composition, and that's that. But those are two examples, like going on a walk, making sure you're eating quality meals. Those are things that actively make me better. And this doesn't have to just be about fitness, nutrition, and all of that. What are some mindset things that make you feel better? Recently, me and Chris had a talk because both of us have kind of gotten a little lazy with some of the things that we know make us better. And not even in regards to like world events, but just, and I was like, I was using the excuse of being in school and having a lot of reading to do to just say, you know what, like I don't need to read. I'm kind of tired. And that is true. That's not false. However, I actively feel better when I'm learning different things. And as much as I'm enjoying school, some of the classes are pretty boring. Some of the chapters are pretty boring. And there's certain things that you're just like, I'm learning this because I have to, but like that's not the same thing as a book that I'm choosing to read and stretch and make me think about something different. So setting a goal of 3 times a week going to read. That could be 5 minutes. Like that might be it. That might be where my brain taps out. But this is an example of something that I kind of slipped out of that I know makes me feel better. So I have to say, as much as I don't have the time, I do have the time. That's a lie. I have the brain power. I have the time. I have to make that happen. So, and that's why sharing that with him was also really important. So we could hold each other accountable throughout that process. This is where coaching becomes so helpful. Every time I work with clients, they're like, wow, like literally the accountability aspect of this is everything. Just because knowing you are going to have to reflect and share something the following week or the following 2 weeks with a coach makes all the difference with decisions. So anyways, now I'm kind of going in a ramble, but you know what I mean. What's worse? And this ding, 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 $1 million question. Ding, ding, like $1 million response. Like, what is making you worse? What are the things that you are doing that makes you worse? Why did I go ding, ding, ding? That wasn't even relevant. My brain just does this. Anyways, you guys, if you've listened to any other podcast or content from me, you know I just be making crazy analogies that make no sense. But we're going to roll with it. Ding, ding, ding. Maybe that was just my way of saying this is really important. Pay attention to this part. Because oftentimes we're always thinking about add. What can I add? And not about what can I subtract? What can I take away that is actively making me feel like shit? And if checking all of, social media accounts and doom scrolling and just spending all this time on there even if it is good stuff, if that's making you not feel great and that's also impacting other stuff, like we just talked about sleep, if now you're in bed and you're scrolling and now your eyes are like glued to the screen and it's late, so you're like looking really close, you're affecting your sleep now. You're affecting the subconscious thoughts you're having before bed. And now that's going to disrupt something. Not only is it on standalone not great, it also is making something that makes you feel good not as effective. So this is where writing out those things that like actively make us worse is so important. And make this super tiny. Make this micro stuff. And also make it big stuff. Make it across all domains. And just be really, really honest. Like this is just like an honest assessment of yourself that can be updated. It can, spend a little bit of time on it. And then, I'm not saying spend an entire weekend, creating like a slide deck on what makes you better or worse. Or maybe do that. That might be something that you enjoy. I like making slides. So not for this. Maybe I should. Did I just have a great idea? Make a slide of all the things that are actively make me better and worse, and then just like remind myself, like just have it pinned on Canva. Okay, I actually might do that. If you guys do it, let me know and send it to me, because now I'm just curious. But anyways, this is something where spending the time to figure out what are the things that actively make you worse are so important. And you'll probably find there's a good amount of overlap between the two things, and they also work like synergistically. So when symbiotically, one of those. When one is happening and the other is not, things are good. When, the negative is happening, that could influence the positive in a not so great way. Okay, you guys get the analogy. We're moving on. Those would be the like micro questions I would ask yourself, because this is how you're going to be able to pull that up, slide deck, sticky note, note in your phone, whatever it is. Pull that up when you are finding yourself getting overwhelmed, getting into a spiral, getting stressed out, and you can help ground yourself in reality. But without having this information, it's going to feel very big and vast and unmanageable. So I hope that these were some short, tactical and practical podcast was useful for you guys. I appreciate you sticking around after the mini unplanned break. If you've not checked out the other episodes, I would highly encourage you to do those as well. And please, please, please feel free to drop questions either in the comments, or there's a whole anonymous link. It's a whole Google form, so you can fill out a question, situation, story, whatever it is that you would like me to answer. I would love to start making this more interactive and answering the questions that you guys have. So feel free to drop that in the anonymous link, or also just below in the comments, and talk to you next week. I'm doing it. What makes me feel better? Putting out podcasts, putting together slideshows. Honestly though, if you guys do a slide deck on this, please let a girl know, because I feel like that could be really fun. Okay.